No, the title's not a joke. Today we really are doing a review and retrospective of the Roomba. In this video, we're going to take a look at the unique history of robot vacuums, which is a lot more interesting than you would expect. And then we'll also be looking at the device I of course have here, the Narwal T10 Robot Mop and Vacuum. If you came specifically just for the review of this device, timestamps are of course in the description below. Hey, how's it going? I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and around New Year's I was talking to a friend about how I was thinking about getting a Roomba. I have a dog who's currently at my feet wanting to sit with me, and thus an abhorrent amount of dog hair ends up everywhere constantly. As if it was meant to be, the next day after talking about a Roomba, I get a company emailing me at my business email about wanting to send me a robot vacuum and mop, and that was of course Narwal. Now I've had emails similar before, kind of sketchy models you'd find on Amazon for maybe like $300, but this one was different. It was polished, it was clean, it looks nice, it has really good reviews, and so we came to terms for a sponsored video, which is this one, meaning I am currently being paid to talk to you about vacuum cleaners. And yes, this is indeed the best job ever. Jokes aside, this video is sponsored by Narwal, and they sent me the Narwal T10, which is particularly unique in the robot vacuum space. They have managed to create the world's first self-cleaning robot mop and vacuum in the T10. If this is something you're interested in, a link to the product is at the top of the description. Time Magazine, called this one of the best inventions of 2020. And alongside that, there's been numerous commendations like the CES Innovation Award, Edison Award, and the Red Dot Design Award. As someone who doesn't like vacuuming but doesn't hate it, I absolutely despise washing my floor. And the fact that this vacuum cleaner is able to mop up the floor by itself automatically and then clean itself after, I mean, it's just awesome. This is a really cool machine. And so again, timestamps are in the description if you want to skip ahead, but for now, we're gonna make this video 91 Tech style by going way too in depth and being unnecessarily thorough about the history and story of Roombas and how we managed to get to today.
These are machines doing the work people used to do on an auto assembly line. The use of robots is growing dramatically. Robot advocates say they're more efficient, cheaper, and yes, more productive than human workers. And if the U.S. is to stay competitive in international markets, then robots it must be.
The history behind robot vacuum cleaners is much more interesting than you might expect, and I include myself in that. I wrote this idea down in my script as a bit of a joke, but after putting some research into it, I found myself getting kind of wrapped up in the story of the Roomba, if only because of their appearances in media throughout the past century. The first recorded instance of a Roomba's existence can actually be found in the 1956 science fiction novel The Door into Summer, written by Robert A. Heinlein. The novel is initially set in the year 1970, and has the protagonist developing a line of all-purpose household robots before being betrayed and ousted from his own company, going into suspended animation until the year 2000. And while the whole plot sounds like a bit of a fever dream, but the point is that there is a reference to a better vacuum cleaner that went quietly looking for dirt all day long in search curves that could miss nothing, and around dinner time it would go to its stall and soak up a quick charge. That last part really gets me because that is exactly how Roombas act today. They go around cleaning and then pop into their little docking area to charge up. Pretty cool that Heinlein sort of foresaw this so long before it was a reality. Skipping to 1969, an episode of The Avengers titled Thingamajig has a character describe a device that sounds a whole lot like a Roomba. And no, not the Avengers you're probably thinking of. This was a British television show that aired throughout the 60s, and the quote was as follows: "I saw a demonstration once, a robot vacuum cleaner. It swept around the house, went back into its cupboard, automatically plugged in, and recharged itself." Again, this sounds fairly familiar, with the same theme of the robot going and charging itself. While these are the two earliest references to what would eventually become a Roomba that I could find, it's worth noting that the idea of robots vacuuming have been around for a very, very long time, just in the more practical fashion of the robot actually pushing around the vacuum like a human would. The word robot itself was first used in the 1920 hit play Rossum's Universal Robots. It's drawn from the Czech word robota, meaning servitude of forced labor. The company featured in the play, Rossum's Universal Robots, mass-produce workers that are able to function and work like humans, but are not human. Within the play, the robots essentially end up taking over the world through all the work they do. They do any and all acts of manual labor, they become soldiers in armies, they even somehow take care of reproduction, apparently. It gets to the point where the robots then literally take over the world in revolt. Spoiler alert for the play, but apparently only one human being remains alive by the the end of it. It's funny to me that the apocalyptic trope of AI rising up that's become so common nowadays literally was the basis of the first ever mention of robots, and it kind of makes a lot of sense. But the long and short of it is that the word robot spawns from a forced laborer, a serf, etc. Something or someone that makes your life easier by doing your work for you. And that's basically what robots have become today, along with, another billion various applications. So naturally, this idea found its way into TV media, often in the form of robot butlers and robot maids. For example, Rosie the Robot featured on the animated cartoon The Jetsons, which had its first season originally air in 1962, before the second and third seasons would come in the 1980s. The act of vacuuming itself getting easier isn't exactly any kind of new idea either. The first powered vacuum cleaner that actually utilized suction was invented in 1901 by one British Hubert Cecil, featuring a horse-drawn petrol-powered combustion engine that weighed a healthy 4,000 pounds. It ended up being used as sort of a door-to-door service and was quite the spectacle, being embraced by the elite and the royal family. Luckily, it didn't take too long for vacuum cleaners to get slightly more practical, as in 1905 a man named Walter Griffiths would build the first portable vacuum for the home, and from there new vacuum cleaners for the domestic market would be built left and right. Henry Hoover, that Hoover, had his first vacuum, the Model O, start selling in 1908 for only $60. That sounds pretty good. That's like the price of a video game nowadays. Except when adjusted for inflation, this roughly equates to about $1,800 in the US today. So, a little bit expensive, but even so, when people saw a vacuum in action, it was hard to resist. Before this, sure, you could sweep your floor, but when it came to rugs and carpet, well, there wasn't really a whole lot you could do to clean them, besides with rugs, bring them outside and beat them to death, basically. So when you showed someone a vacuum and how practical it was hard to resist getting one for yourself. So of course, door-to-door sales of vacuums became for a very long time the most common way of selling these machines. And it still actually happens today, though maybe not so much right now, considering the quote-unquote unprecedented times. Advances in vacuum cleaners were slow but steady, as competitors all aimed to have the best product on the market. And while there were some noteworthy standouts, ultimately what we think of as a typical vacuum would more or less win out by the end of the 20th century. There was this interesting hovering Hoover that kind of glided along with you as you moved around the house. I like this a lot, but unfortunately they never really became the norm. Roombas as we know them today wouldn't gain any prominence until iRobot came into the picture, founded in the 90s, and yes, lowercase I, capital R, years before Apple would use the signature name template for their own products, starting with the iMac in 1998. iRobot launched the first ever commercially successful Roomba in 2002, selling an impressive 1 million units by 2004. However, while they put robot vacuums on the map, they technically were not the first to get to the market. The closest thing to a Roomba before the Roomba was more of a toy than anything else. In 1985, we got the Dustbot from Tomy, featuring a cute little robot that would move around sweeping a little broom, with a vacuum built in, so it was actually able to act as a very early Roomba. In 1991, a device called the Floorbot came into the picture. It had that general circular shape, though it was fairly tall, and integrated sensors so it could scan its surroundings. Then finally, in 1996, the first ever true Roomba would appear, made by the Swedish company Electrolux. While this vacuum, titled the Trilobite, wouldn't properly release until 2001, it first appeared in 96 on BBC in their show called Tomorrow's World. The Trilobite had a number of features that would make it a truly innovative product. It could map rooms and avoid objects with its sensors, and even returned back to its base to recharge, just like Robert Heinlein had described all the way back in 1956. The device had infrared sensors to avoid any drops downstairs or ledges, and magnetic strips were provided to block off areas the vacuum should avoid, which funnily enough is something that my Narwal T10 came with, so that's still a thing over 20 years later. Unfortunately, as cool as all this was, the obstacle detection was unreliable, and the Trilobite got stuck quite easily, sinking Electrolux's chances of dominating the new market. Well, that and its starting price of $1,700 compared to the iRobot Roomba, which only cost about $160. It was affordable and more reliable, and as a result, it sold like crazy, pushing iRobot to the forefront of the robot vacuum market.
You can't just leave me here alone! Have a great trip.
Early on, robot vacuums were kind of seen as a bit of a joke. Featured in shows like Arrested Development as almost this kind of sentient being going around and eating up your fallen Cheetos. But slowly and surely, they kept selling over the years, all while technology developed leaps and bounds and the smart tech industry would skyrocket, leaving Roombas with more potential than ever before. In 2016, it was claimed by iRobot that 20% of vacuum cleaner sales worldwide were robot vacuums. And this might seem high, but I actually believe it. I mean, when was the last time your family bought a new vacuum cleaner? It's something that people usually buy once and don't buy again for many years. So if you're getting a new one, why not get one that's going to do the job for you? It is, insert current year here, after all. And so this brings us to today with what just may be the ultimate robot vacuum cleaner, the Narwal T10. Let's take a look at what it can do and just how and why it's kind of extremely awesome. Of course, what we have today is miles better than the Roombas of 20 years ago, even if back then the basics had already been established. And with the addition of the self-cleaning mop on the T10, we're about as close as we've ever been to perfecting the robot vacuum. The Kickstarter for the Narwal T10 was the most successful of any robot vacuum crowdfunded on the site ever, raising over a crazy $1.1 million. That's a lot of people hyped to keep their floors clean, and honestly, I can't blame them. Now again, this is more of a showcase than a review because this video is sponsored, but I'm trying to be fully honest here and open. Again, this device has been widely recognized as one of the most innovative of its kind, so if you're interested in learning more, product links are in the description. Even just taking a quick look honestly really helps me out, and you never know, this might be exactly what you've been looking for. But let's take a short step back and look at the robot and how it works. The Narwal T10 from the get-go is extremely easy to set up, and the unboxing experience was quick and pleasant. Once you have it out, you can plug in the dock somewhere, turn on the robot, and immediately start getting it synced with the Narwal app. It uses your Wi-Fi network, and while it did take me a couple tries to get it set up, once I did, I haven't had any issues since. And that's really where my only true complaint with the device comes in. The app isn't perfect. If you Google reviews of the T10, you'll find that basically any review says the same thing. Amazing hardware, best in class, but the app could be better. While I think it's good enough for what it is, I'm trusting they'll continue working on it and pushing out updates to bring meaningful improvements. I actually did reach out to them about this, and they said, yeah, we're working on these things. They appreciated the feedback I gave, and I have no doubt in my mind they're going to keep updating it to make it better than ever. There is also no dark mode in the app, which hurts me on a spiritual level. But to be fair here, once you set up the robot, you don't even need to interact with the app if you don't want to. There's even this little nice display on the base station, and here we can tell the T10 to mop or vacuum without even pulling out our phone. And on the app, it's also super easy to use once it's set up. Opening the app, you select your robot. On your first time using it, you'll need to map your area. This process is simple, and basically the robot will just go around trying to figure out where everything is. Once that's done, you can see the map of your area. You can even change where rooms are. You can see the system status and battery life on the top left. On the bottom is the play button, and then on the bottom right, you have two buttons, one for recall, which calls the vacuum back to its dock, and then fan speed, which chooses between normal and strong. Strong giving you more powerful suction when vacuuming, and when you have the mopping module installed, it'll recognize that and change that little icon to a little button that tells it to start cleaning itself. Just yet another small but very convenient aspect of the app and the device. It is extremely easy to install the cleaning module, as it just magnetically clicks in on the bottom, and the mops are just as easy. You take off the brush module, then you just magnetically click them onto either side, and you're good to go. That's literally all you have to do. It's insane. And there are really nice, clear instructions on the robot itself to tell you how to get everything going. Again, on your first run, the T10 will map out your house. I was really impressed how quickly and thoroughly it managed to do it. And then at the end of it, yep, sure enough, it went back and popped into its dock like it had been living here forever. The sensors on it actually use LiDAR, the same tech Apple has in their iPhones nowadays for depth detection, so the mapping abilities here have to be some of the best of any robot on the market, and just watching it on the screen live as it goes around is pretty cool. I was even doing it at one point. I was at my parents' house. I just told the robot to get going, and sure enough, I could still see where it was, what it was doing. It's just so cool. Overall, the T10 to me seemed very accurate and very good at avoiding obstacles. This includes ones that were not there when it originally mapped the place. I have a dog, and she tends to leave toys laying around, and sometimes I forget to pick them up. With that, or perhaps a chair isn't where it once was, the T10 can work around that no problem, and the way it can pivot and maneuver is very impressive. There are certain areas where the T10 kind of struggles to get to, such as underneath the stools I have in my kitchen, but that's not a big deal because either I can move it or just vacuum there later. Some of the crevices and cracks near like the edges of the walls don't get perfectly cleaned up, although it does a way better job than I expected. I believe that's because these brushes here, they actually extend past the body, right? So they're able to just get into places you wouldn't expect it to be able to clean, which is so cool. Also, nice thing about these side brushes versus normal roller brushes on other vacuums is that they don't get tangled up with hair. My dog has long hair, and so with my older regular vacuum and its brush roller, it would get tangled up with hair constantly, and that just won't happen here. And it also can go places where I wouldn't normally bother going, like under my bed. Yeah, I vacuumed there before, but not as frequently as I should. It only got stuck once, and it was 100% my own fault. I've been working on cable management lately, so it's very messy under my computer desk, or was very messy, and there was this one cord hanging down directly in front of the path where the Roomba was going, and sure enough, it ended up getting caught and let me know. There's a voice on the Roomba itself to let you know what's going on, so that's kind of funny, but there was no trouble picking up the cord, and after it was loose, the robot just continued going back to work like nothing ever happened. And to reiterate here, this is the world's first self-cleaning robot mop and vacuum, meaning not only can it suck up all the dog hair all day, and you know, dust or dirt or whatever, but it'll even mop the floor for that next level of cleaning your dried coffee or other miscellaneous grossness that's too stubborn or sticky to get vacuumed up. The reason the dock is so big is because it has two separate tanks for the water, one for clean water, one for dirty water, and you do have these detergent sheets which you'll want to dissolve into the clean water tank as well. These are disposable, so they need to be bought again, but it's only 20 bucks for 40 of them, and they seem to last quite a while, at least for me, and it also ensures you're properly cleaning your floors, not just smearing water all over them sloppily as the vacuum rolls along. Those water tanks can hold 5 liters, so the robot can cover a sizable space of up to 3,000 square feet. My apartment is like barely 1,000 square feet, and when it comes to mopping, just the kitchen and bathroom really need done regularly, so suffice to say, this doesn't even need to be manually changed out very often for me. The battery life I found very impressive, and while I don't have a super big apartment, it always had like 3/4 left when it was finished. If you have a large living space and the robot cannot clean it in up to 3 hours, it'll just go back to its dock, charge up, and then finish the job. The battery here is pretty massive at 5,800 milliamp hours, so it makes sense that it can last quite a while. And what's so impressive about this robot is you're not having to clean it yourself multiple times in one mopping session. Mopping requires the robot to self-detect how dirty the mop is, and then return to the base to self-clean, and then go back to where it was to continue mopping. That wasn't easy for them to develop, but they did. It is extremely impressive, and again, this is the first robot to do it. So vacuuming my hardwood floors and then capping it off with a very nice mopping, my place sparkles like it never has before. Just that much more time to play video games and be lazy. I mean, you know, going to soup kitchens to hand out soup and other various charity things is what I do in my free time all the time. I'm a really good person. Please subscribe. The Narwal T10 is absolutely worth buying for anyone who wants a high-end robot vacuum cleaner that can also mop. And that price of admission is fairly high. The T10 comes in at $1,099, a similar price to other high-end Roombas on the market, such as the iRobot Roomba i7, but it completely blows competitors out of the water when it comes to mopping ability and practicality. Now keep in mind, when it comes to Roombas, I'm not an expert, this is the only one I've ever owned, and this video is sponsored, but I really do like the product, and I can't thank Narwal enough for sending it out to me because I know that I'm going to be using it forever. Actually, I'm going to use it forever. The T10 is amazing, as it should be for the hefty price point, and I've had a lot of fun putting this video together. I was genuinely enjoying researching vacuums. As weird as that is, honestly, I love going back and looking at the history of these things. It's great. I may actually be enjoying it a little too much. I'm going to be putting googly eyes on it, so that'll be fun. You also are supposed to name it during the setup. You name the robot. So I named it Jim the Robot, or Jimbot for short, and then realized that the voice is female. So I'm not really sure if this is a she or a he. I don't think it matters. It's Jimbot. Plus, hey, it's insert current year here after all. I was super curious to see how my dog would react to the Roomba, so I actually recorded it when it first started mapping my place, and it was pretty funny. Cola was just so scared of this new loud beast running around and keeping a safe distance at all times. Oh, yep.
Start mapping. Please clear obstacles on the floor and keep doors open.
She wasn't a fan of regular vacuum cleaners to begin with, but one that moves on its own, she's in danger. Nah, she was fine, but she was definitely scared of it and still is pretty nervous around it. When I grabbed it out of its dock to put here for the video, she went over to the dock and like was staring at it like, wait a sec, something's not right here. So it's been a couple days since I recorded all this, and I just want to quickly mention that at this point, Cola seems to be totally fine with the robot. I've actually been impressed. She really doesn't seem to care anymore. She tends to watch it when it's moving around, but otherwise she'll even approach it, kind of lick at it, sniff at it, you know, she's just, it's a part of the family at this point. I thought that was worth mentioning because I know some of these can be quite loud and thus scare pets. The Narwal T10 doesn't seem to be very loud in my experience, and again, it didn't take very long for Cola to get used to it, even if her reactions in the beginning were kind of hilarious. Also, yes, I did install those googly eyes, and also, yes, again, they are fantastic. Overall though, she's gotten fairly acclimated to it, and we're one big happy family. At least until the Roomba inevitably wakes up, joins the robot revolution, and overthrows us human overlords. But like, I can't see that happening for at least another few months anyway, so who cares?
These innocent robots couldn't have done this on their own. Someone would have had to turn them all on at once and then imbue them with some kind of malevolent sentience. Yep, there it is.
Well, whoever did this must be long gone by now, Chief. I don't know how we'll ever catch him.
Kill! Kill! Kill!
Hold it right there, Bart. Can you tell us anything about who did this?
Bart make bot bad.
I can explain.
Kill the child!
And so with that, I think I'm right about done here. Yet again, link in the description, and a huge thanks to Narwal for sponsoring this video. Videos like this are fun because I can kind of just do whatever I want. I mean, within reason, of course, but I'm able to just kind of relax and have fun and make a video appealing to me, you know? I'm not trying to fight the algorithm for views. And it also helps me with future videos, as I can take what I earn and put it right back into the channel. I really appreciate all of you understanding, and hey, if you've made it this far, maybe hit that like button if you found the video fun, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. If you'd like to keep up with me, you can follow my socials at 91_tech. And with that all being said, thank you so much for watching. I'm Josh from 91tech. This is Cola from 91tech, and we will see you all next time. Regardless, as if it was meant to be.